Hey guys, happy Monday. So today's lesson, we're going to extend on our mean, median, mode range, as well as our dot plot idea. Today's lesson is they're called box plots. Sometimes they're considered box and whisker plots, and I'll explain why that's the case in just a second. So this is an example of one, if you can see right here. So what it looks like is there's a box, and the box contains 3 points. And then sometimes we call these 2 points out here the whiskers because they kind of go out from the box. So here's kind of a gist of what we're going to do. We're going to go through the notes. You guys are going to do some examples, and then you'll have the activities to work on after that. So let's read this example. The following are the number of minutes it took students to complete their timed multiplication quiz. So a couple things. Right here is all of our data. So how many students took this quiz? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So 13 students took this quiz. Okay, it took this student 5 minutes to complete their multiplication quiz, this student 9 minutes to complete their multiplication quiz, this student 2 minutes, this student also took 2 minutes, this student took 4 minutes, so you get the idea of what the data exactly means. So the first thing that we want to do in our box and whisker plot, the step 1, is to list our data in numerical order from least to greatest. So my suggestion when you guys do this is I would cross them off as you go. The other thing is why I counted up my data in the first place is it's going to help me remember and make sure I have all of it down here. So from least to greatest, I got 2, 2, got that twice. I got 2 3s. I got 2 4s. 2 5s. 6. 1 7. 1 8. And 2 students who took 9 minutes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Okay, I got all my pieces of data because if you miss one, it throws off all the rest of this pieces. So you wouldn't be able to answer your median, your quartiles correctly. So that's your first step. Step 2, find your min. We call it the minimum value. This is your smallest number. And the max. This is your maximum value or the largest number in your data. So our minimum is 2. Our maximum is 9. Okay? That part's pretty easy. Step 3, find your median. This is sometimes called your Q2 or your second quartile as well. We're going to talk more about your quartiles in just a second. So the median, we know how to find the middle, and this is nice because we already have them in order. So we have 13 students. So what's about half of 13? About 6.5. So I'm going to count 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. I do have a set median here. My median is 5. Okay, so now let's take a look. This is the last step here to get the 5-number summary in a box plot. Notice there's 5 dots in your box and whisker plot, okay? So you're going to get 5 pieces of data. So far we've got 1, 2, 3, and then these last 2 are going to be our last 2 pieces. So far pretty easy. Minimum, smallest, maximum, largest, median or Q2 is that middle. So now we're going to find the lower quartile. This is called Q1. And how you find this is the middle of the lower 50% of the data. So here's kind of our halfway. So this is 50% of the data. This is 50% of the data. We're going to find the middle of the lower because right here was your median, your Q2. I just put our data numbers down in order from least to greatest that we did up there. Here's my Q2. So how you find your Q1, you do not include your median. It's the middle of the lower half of the data, the lower 50%. So let's find the middle here. So counting inwards. Okay, so I have 2 numbers in the middle here. So if you average these together, or what's in between exactly 3 and 3? It is 3. So our Q1 is Q3. Your Q3, or your upper quartile, this is the middle of the upper 50% of your data. So here's my median again. We don't include that in our Q3. Going to the right of that, finding the middle. So we once again have two numbers in the middle of our Q3. So what is exactly, or what are these averaged out to be, or what's directly in the middle of 7 and 8? 7.5. Okay, so you've got all of your quartiles. Quartile 1, quartile 2 is your median, quartile 3 is your upper. So see this, Q1, Q2, Q3, and then these are kind of your whiskers, your min and your max. So let's put this all together here. Okay, we're going to create our own box and whisker here. So on a number line, okay, my data ranged from 2 to 9. So I made a number line of 0 to 10 just to kind of show you the spread. You're going to plot a point above each of your values, your minimum, your lower quartile or your Q1, your median or your Q2, your upper quartile or your Q3, and then your max, okay? So my minimum and my maximum were 2 and 9. That was my min. This is my max. Okay, now we're going to put in our Q1, Q2, Q3. That's kind of that inner box. So my Q1 was 3. My Q2 is 5. And my Q3 was 7.5. Okay, so that was my Q1. This is my Q2 or my median. They kind of go back and forth in between. And your Q3. So, kind of how I showed you in our example with my box and whisker up here. The box goes around your 3 quartiles, and there's always a line indicating where your median is, or your Q2. Okay, so you draw a box through the points for the first and the third quartiles. You then draw a vertical line through the box of the median. Okay, we now can draw our whiskers out to the max and to the min. So let's just talk about this for a second. These 5 points are called our 5-point number summary. Okay, now this is, it's close to being symmetrical, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. Okay, so there's 1 digit away from your min and your Q1. Here it's spread out 2. Here it's almost 2. It's like 2.5 here. So that's why I'm saying it's close to being symmetrical, but it is not perfectly symmetrical. Remember, symmetrical is if I drew a line, it would look identical from one side to the other. Okay, it does look similar, very close, but not perfectly symmetrical. So now let's talk about the next key point. Each of these quartiles represents 25% of the data. So what do I mean by this? From your min to your Q1, that's 25% of the data. 25% of your students took between 2 and 3 minutes. Does that make sense? 25% of the students took between 3 and 5 minutes in between these two quartiles. 25% of your students took between 5 and 7.5 minutes. And 25% of your students took between 7.5 and 9 minutes. So as you can see, 25, 25, 25, 25, that makes up 100% of your data. So that's all of my data here. Okay, so taking a look at this, each of these quartile separations from min to Q1 is 25% of your data. From Q1 to Q2 is 25% of your entire data. The data from Q2 to Q3 is 25% of your data. And from Q3 to the max is 25% of your data. So sometimes I like to ask these questions. So let's go through and practice a couple of these together. What percent of students took from 2 to 3 minutes on their quiz? That's one section, so that's 25% of your data. What percent, so remember if you're looking for a percent, okay, of students took between 3 and 5 minutes. Even though that doesn't look the same, remember our data is not spread across the same. So still 25% of our data. What percent of students took between 5 and 9 minutes? Now be careful on this. 5 and 9 minutes. How many sections or how many quartiles is that between? 2. So that's 50% of our data. So 50% of the students took between 5 and 9 minutes. So if you kind of go back and look at this, is that 50% of your data? You betcha. What percent of students took between 3 and 7.5? So that's how many quartiles? 2. Each of those quartiles is 25% away from, or 25% of your data. So that's 50% of our data, or 50% of our students took between 3 and 7.5 minutes. What percent of our students took between 3 and 9 minutes? That would be 75% because there's 3 quartiles worth of data there. What percent of students took 2 to 9 minutes? Well, how many students took between 2 and 9? All of them. That's where all of our data is graphed, so that would be 100%. What percent of students took 2 or more minutes on their quiz? How many students took 2 or more minutes on their quiz? Once again, that's 100% of your students. All of them. Okay? So remember this 25%, 25%, 25%, 25% between each point. That's going to help you answer any of the percent style questions. The last piece to this notes is IQR. You're going to start to see this word. This stands for inner quartile range. This kind of helps us because we know what the range is. We know what the regular range is. So I'm going to quickly review with you our range. Remember, our range is our highest minus our lowest. So our highest is our max of 9. Our lowest is our min, which is 2. So your range of data is 7 minutes. Okay? It took the highest student 9 minutes to complete the quiz, the lowest student 2 minutes to complete the quiz. So the range of minutes to complete the quiz for this class was 7 minutes. So that's the regular range. What do you think inner quartile range is? These are very different. Okay? Range is the highest minus the lowest. Inner quartile range is just the inner quartiles, just these 3 quartiles. What is the range of the quartiles? So how could we find these? You're going to subtract your Q3 minus your Q1. So in this case, we're going to subtract 7.5 minus 3 would give us an inner quartile range of 4.5. Okay, the inner quartile range, this contains approximately the middle 50% of your data points. So this is 25%, this is 25%. That's the inner 50%. That's the middle 50% of your data points. Okay, so between 3 and 7.5 on our data in order. So that's about 50% of our data in the middle there. Okay. So our inner quartile range is 4.5. The regular range is 7 minutes. Does that make sense? So what you guys are going to do for the remainder of this lesson is you're going to answer a couple of these questions on your own. There's 3 quick check-in questions based on this box and whisker plot that I created for you. And then you guys are going to complete the slides, and then you have some task cards. You will be doing your check-in for this lesson on Wednesday. Have a great Monday. I'll see you later.